Myself, Dr. R. Upasani, University Professor cum Chief Scientist in the Department of Agronomy, Birsa Agriculture University, Ranchi. Today, I will deliver a lecture on weed biology and ecology under the subject weed management, which is being covered under graduate course. Now, as we know, the weeds are number one enemy of farmer, because it has been seen that lot of nutrients, moisture and light is being utilized by the weeds this way that restrict the growth and development of crop plant. So weeds are farmers' enemy number one. Food security faces risk not just from floods, drought and pests and diseases, but also from unnoticed threats of weeds. Rarely we think that after growing a crop, we don't consider weed as its threat to the crop production, but it has a very big threat, because almost 33% of yield loss is because of weeds as compared to other diseases and insects. According to a report by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO), weeds are causing about 95 billion yield loss or crop loss worldwide, and according to an estimate that out of this total $95 billion loss, about 70% loss is in developing countries. Now, as I told, that weeds are number one enemy of farmers. So, unless until you know what are the weaknesses, what are the positive things about your enemy, you are not able to control it. So, one has to be very much aware about your enemy. So, if you know your enemy and know yourself, you will not be in danger. So, you can develop some strategy to control that. That's why you will not be at risk. But if you are not prepared, if you are not knowing what are the enemies positive things or enemies qualities, so you will not be able to control that. So it has been said that if you do not know your enemies nor yourself, you are in danger. We should have knowledge about weed biology and ecology. In weed biology, we study all aspects of biological procedure in which the weeds is occurring. For example, weed biology comprises of reproduction of seeds. Weed biology comprises of weed seed dormancy. Weed biology comprises of dissemination of weed, means dispersal from one place to another, and persistence of weed. So these 4 points I will deal one after another. First of all, reproduction of weed. Weeds reproduce either by seeds or vegetative propagules. Weed seed dormancy. All weeds are not capable of germinating at one time immediately after maturity. They require certain dormancy period. Similarly, dispersal of weed. Dispersal means how they move from one place to another. Weeds cannot walk from one place to another. They have to develop certain mechanism by which they go from one place to another. So they have certain developed appendages by which they move from one place to another, either by wind, either by this water, or and either by animal. So there are various ways by which weeds disperse from one place to another. Another thing is persistence of weed. So we have found that in spite of best control method, weeds remain in the same place year after year. So this is the quality of weed, that they have certain mechanism, inbuilt hardiness, that they don't vanish from from a specific area, and this way they come up year after year. What is weed biology and ecology? Just now I narrated about weed biology. Now I will deal with the weed ecology. What is weed ecology? Weed ecology deals with the interaction or relationship between weed and its environment. So ecology comprises of two words, eco and logy. Eco means environment and logy means to study. So this ecology deals with the an interaction of weeds with the environment in which they are appearing. The knowledge of weed biology and ecology is essential for development of both economically as well as environmentally acceptable weed management tactics or strategy. Now, I will take first reproduction of weeds. Plants have two main mode of reproduction. So they reproduce by either seed or vegetative. So most of the annual or biennial weeds reproduce by seed, whereas most of the perennial weeds which remain year after year in the ecosystem, so they generally reproduce by their vegetative propagules. And these annual weeds are seasonal weeds, so they complete their life cycle in a single year, whereas this biennial weeds, they have vegetative phase in first year and reproductive stage after first year, means second year, whereas perennial weeds continues to reproduce year after year, so they are called as perennial. So how annual and biennial reproduce? Weed seeds are difficult to control due to the following factors. So annual weeds or biennial weeds are very difficult to control. Why? Because seed size. You see, the seed size of annual, most of the seasonal weeds are very small, and they can disperse from one place to another easily, either by air, either by water, or by sticking over the animals. So they are very difficult to control. So production of a small seed is a common mechanism that ensures a high probability of dispersal and reinfestation. Small seeds are easily dispersed by wind and water, and they preclude easy direction above the soil surface. So they remain on the upper soil surface, and this way scattered on the soil surface, and as soon as they get the conducive environment, they start germinating. Whereas the wheat seed bank, annual weeds or biennial weeds remain accumulated in the soil, and it has been seen that about 4 to 5 centimeter of soil surface is have the seed bank, means there is storage of lot of seasonal weeds, and it has been seen that the average arable soil has about 30,000 to about 3,50,000 seeds per meter square. In general, the soil seeds bank emerges each year. This figure shows that under loamy soil as well as silty loam soil, the deposition of weeds differ, and this also governed by what type of tillage you have performed. For example, in first graph, you see that loamy sand soil has about 63% of deposition of wheat seed, where the more bore plough has been performed, whereas when this under silty loam soil, the deposition of wheat seeds are about 37% on the top 2 inches, and more under the 4 to 6 inches depth, whereas in loamy sand soil, maximum deposition of wheat seeds is near the 2 to 4 inches, whereas in silty loam soil, the maximum deposition is on the upper 2 inches when the chisel plough has been performed. Whereas in case of no-till soil, where you have not performed any type of tillage, their maximum deposition of wheat seeds on the upper 2 inches. You see here under loamy sand soil, the deposition is about 90%, and under silty loam soil, the deposition of wheat seeds about 74%. Now, seed production mechanism. Seed production mechanism also influence the reproduction of the wheat seeds. You see that annual wheats reproduce more and more seeds as compared to other perennial seeds. Perennial seeds mostly propagate through vegetatively, whereas annual wheats propagate through seeds. So they have immense capacity to reproduce seeds. For example, annual wheat seed produce very large number of seeds, which varies from 40 to 1,96,000 per plant. The immediate viability of wheat seeds vary from 6 to 78%. One plant of Chenopodium album could produce about 72,000 seeds per plant, which are capable of remaining viable even up to 25 years. Thus, a few VD plants escape from the control measure in the field are sufficient to produce enough seed to continue their progeny for years to come. There is one common saying. What is that? A common proverb says, 1 year seeding in 7 years weeding. Means if you monitor your field and you find a new weed in your field and you have not removed it, so ultimately it will take about 7 years to control that weed, because that weed will produce immense wheat seeds and they will disperse in the entire field and they will give rise to more number of wheat plants, and this way they will dominate the whole field. So it will take about 7 years. So one should be very careful. If any new weed is coming into your field, you should immediately control it. We will come to perennial weeds. So as I told that perennial weeds are those weeds which completes its vegetative phase in first year and thereafter they continue to reproduce year after year. So such type of weeds are known as perennial weeds. So they mostly propagate through vegetative propagules. Vegetative propagules means they have either they reproduce by cuttings, they reproduce by underground rhizome, stolons, tubers, bulbs. So these are the various forms of vegetative propagule by which perennial weeds propagate. So perennial reproduce by seeds or through vegetative means, which is the most unfortunate aspect of weed management. The mode of vegetative reproduction includes rhizome, stolon, tuber, bulbs, corn, roots and stem. So there are various forms of vegetative propagules by which these perennial weeds reproduce. So first of all, rhizome. The rhizome stem that give rise to aerial shoots, for example, Cyprus rotundus. So Cyprus rotundus is a very common weed in farmers' field because they reproduce by underground rhizome. So underground rhizome just spread in the subsoil layer even up to the 1 meter depth. So it is very difficult to remove those rhizome from the underground soil. So even if you remove part of it, but some parts will remain in the soil and that will give rise to another rhizome, or this will give rise to another Cyprus rotundus plant. So this is the figure of Cyprus rotundus. Now stolons. You have seen that many aquatic plants, for example, this Eichhornia crassipes, which is also known as water hyacinth, found in aquatic system, and this is very harmful in aquatic system because once they spread on the water surface, they just restrict the oxygen supply under the water. This way the underwater living bodies just die off because of lack of oxygen. So they propagate through stolons. So horizontally growing stem that roots at nodes, for example, Eichhornia crassipes and Cynodon. So here they have certain aerial roots which floats in the water. Similarly, Cynodon. You must have seen that Cynodon. This is also known as the doob grass, and this run on the soil surface, giving rise to some nodes, roots at the nodes. So this way they propagate in the form of stolons. Similarly, another form of propagation is through tubers. Tubers are a swollen part of or swollen portion of underground plant. For example, many Oxalis corniculata. Oxalis corniculata reproduce by underground tubers. Similarly, bulbs. Bulbs are also one of the important propagule by which these weeds propagate. For example, underground storage organ compose swollen leaf base or scales. For example, Allium canadicum, Allium vineal, and Hydrilla verticillata. These are the weeds by which these propagate through bulb. Stem and nodes. Many perennial weeds, for example, woody plant like this Lantana camera, Prosopis jolliflora, or any other Chromelena odorata. These are certain weeds by which propagate through cutting. If you just cut the plant stem and you just plant it, it will again give rise to another plant part. So fragments of stem and roots of many weeds can grow into full plant. For example, detached stem pieces, that is Cuscuta arvensis. So Cuscuta arvensis, creeping horizontal roots, they all propagate through cuttings. So this Cuscuta is a viney structure of the plant, which is a parasitic weed, and this just overlap the whole plant and just take out the nutrients from the host plant for their survival. So they also propagate through stem cutting. If you just cut this Cuscuta arvensis and you just throw on the another plant, it will develop into another Cuscuta arvensis weed. Now, creeping roots. The creeping roots that give rise to new shoots, for example, Convolvulus arvensis. Convolvulus arvensis is a very very hardy weed which roots very deep into the soil, and this way it is you are not able to uproot that totally from the soil. So some part or some portion of Convolvulus arvensis remain underground, and that even after removal of the weeds, this Convolvulus arvensis, these underground roots will again give rise to another new plant. Some of the characteristics I have shown that how they are important. For example, Cynodon dactylon. This is a creeping rhizome spread laterally, and the depth of vegetative reproductive part is very shallow. Similarly, Sericium arvensis, creeping roots, and the depth is very deep. Taraxacum officinale, this is a fleshy taproot, and this is very shallow type. Convolvulus arvensis, creeping roots, very deep, they go very deep into the soil. Oxalis corniculata, this bulb and taproots and rhizome, so they are very shallow depth, and they are usually found in the garden region. Now, some perennial weeds are also prolific seed producers. It is not always that perennial weeds propagate through this vegetative propagule. Of course, they reproduce through seeds also, but the quantity of seed is very less. But exceptionally, this sorghum helipens is mainly bear the lot of seeds, and this also dispersed through the seed also. In addition to underground rhizome, this also propagate through seeds also. Some perennial weeds are also prolific seed producers, for example, sorghum helipens. So their ability to produce both vegetative propagules and seeds make them very competitive and aggressive in cropping system. Sorghum helipens assume perennial characteristics within 3 to 6 weeks of emergence. So it is very hard to remove sorghum helipens from field once it has infested the field. Convolvulus arvensis becomes a perennial when it has become 20 true leaves. If you have managed it prior to appearance of 20 leaves, so it will be easy. But once it has established 20 leaves stage, then it means they have spread their roots quite in large area under the soil. So it will be very difficult. So one should be very cautious to remove Convolvulus arvensis prior to development of its root system. Similarly, Cyperus esculentus, they are 4 to 6 weeks after it emerges from the seed. So Convolvulus arvensis usually found in aquatic system, in particularly in rice field, and you will find that it also spread through seed also. These young plants can be controlled by tillage or hoeing before they assume perennial characteristics. The tillage can worsen the problem after plant becomes this perennial. So wheat seed dormancy. Another part, second part is out of 4 is the wheat seed dormancy. As I said, that dormancy refers to the state in which viable seed fails to germinate even under favorable environment or condition. Most seeds are dormant at maturity, called primary dormancy. And after the primary dormancy is broken, the environmental condition induce secondary dormancy, which regulates seasonal germination in wheat seeds. The majority of wheat seeds lying below soil depth remain dormant and act as a source of future flushes of weeds. Now, what are the causes of dormancy? Have you ever found or examined when you sow a seed, some seed doesn't germinate, but some seeds starts germinating because the germinating weeds have broken its primary dormancy condition and that has started germinating, whereas some seeds remain under dormant condition and fail to germinate. So almost there are various factors which is responsible for for the dormancy of the seed. For example, light. Almost half of the annual wheat seeds, especially small seeded, require light for germination. It has been seen that most of the seasonal weeds remain on the 4 to 5 centimeter of soil surface, and when light can penetrate even up to 2 millimeter of soil surface. So that penetration of light just helps the wheat seeds to germinate earlier as compared to the crop seed which has been sown quite deeper in the soil. Light penetrates only 1 to 2 millimeter in soil, so dormancy can be induced by shallow burial. Seeds of Stellaria media, Portulaca oleracea, Sorghum halipens and Amaranthus viridis require light for germination, while germination of Datura strumarium is favored by darkness. So different weed species differ for their light requirement for germination. So immature embryo. If we see that a crop or a wheat plant bear the this flower and set the seed in their fruit section, then it is not necessarily that whatever that fruit has been set in the seed is viable. So that is more, because there is chances that the embryo within that seed is immature. So embryo which needs more growth before the seed germinate, for example Typha latifolia and polygonum. So this Typha is usually found in aquatic it is a type of emerged weed and that is found in ditches on the roadside. If you find ditches on the both sides of the road, you will find that this Typha longistifolia is quite visible in many places. So they bear the fruit but seed, but their embryo may not be mature enough to give to another plant. Impermeable seed coat. You might have seen that a lot of wheat seed or crop seed, they have very hard seed coat. For example, pulses. If you see the pulse crop, there is a hard coating on the seed. So that is very difficult to germinate because the moisture cannot easily penetrate the hard seed coat. So impermeable seed coat is very defective dormancy mechanism occurring in weeds belonging to families Leguminaceae, Malvaceae, Chenopodiaceae and Solanaceae. So these are the certain figures of seeds of Malvaceae family, Evolmoschus esculentus, again Chenopodiaceae, Chenopodium album. So and here you see the this seed has very hard yellowish brown color of seed coat, which is very hard and moisture cannot easily penetrate in the seed. So a hard seed coat presents mechanical resistance to germination because the radicle cannot penetrate, for example, Amaranthus retroflexa and Brassica nigra. Now, germination inhibitors. Of course, there are certain, even if seed coat is very soft and dormancy is very less, all conditions are favorable, but another thing is that the chemicals present in the seed, for example, abscisic acid or coumarin acid or ferulic acid. So these restrict the germination of the seed. Unless until their level or their concentration is lowered down, then only the wheat seeds will start germinating. So here it can be said that some seeds are shed with endogenous germination inhibition, for example coumarin, ferulic acid, abscisic acid, which do not allow these wheats to germinate. The seed germinate only when the concentration of these inhibitors are slowed down or come down. Now oxygen. Oxygen is also very important for germination of the wheat seeds. So partial pressure of oxygen affect seed dormancy. One of the reasons why most seed germinates only near the soil surface is higher oxygen concentration. Soil compaction, which may reduce partial pressure of oxygen, reduces seed germination. This has been seen that most of the wheat seeds which remains on the top surface of the soil, they start germinating because there is no lack of oxygen. So they start germinating. But once you have compacted the soil, you have made the soil buried within the soil, under the soil, so they will not germinate immediately because of lack of oxygen pressure. Temperature, as in case of crop, we have seen that there is optimum temperature requirement for germination of the crop seed. So similarly, in case of wheat also, they also require certain temperature. So every seed has minimum and maximum temperature requirement, and deviation in temperature from these ranges will induce germination by altering temperature. Similarly, after ripening requirement, there is an after ripening requirement for some seeds, and the seed will not germinate until it has ripened. So full mature embryo will only germinate, and the unripe or immature type of seed will not germinate. So these are the certain requirements for effective germination of wheat seeds.